Hello, beautiful alchemist. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and today we are diving into part three with Nicole Barton, the secret witch. Now, last time we spoke about discovery of your unique gifts, but now today we're going to talk about the expression, getting your gifts out there to the world. And we talk a lot about remedy. And she talks about how remedies often reveal the wound. And there are often changes in relationships when we do this work. But she also talks to us again about how to get your work out there. We talk a bit about marketing and different cycles that we go through. We talk about fear of power versus respect, some more juicy nuggets in this conversation. So don't forget, if you want to attend her event to get a taste of her upcoming membership, be sure to register. The event is on April 24th, and the link to register is down in the show description. But to learn more about Nicole and her work in general, go to her website, nicolebarton.co.uk, and follow her on Instagram at I am Nicole Barton. Now, I hope that you are enjoying these conversations. As I always say, feel free to reach out to me, share your thoughts. You can also reach out to the guest and let them know what you think of their work, their information, or any questions you have for them. But for now, just sit back and relax. Let's get into this episode, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, everyone, we are back for the third hour here on Reiki Radio with Nicole Barton, the secret witch. This has been so juicy, Nicole. I have to thank you again for sitting with us for this extended conversation.
It's my pleasure. It's nothing I love more.
Yeah. Well, you have given us a lot. So, in the first hour, we talked about personal healing. Then on Wednesday, we talked about the discovery of unique gifts. And now we're going to talk about expression, soul mapping. But there's also this tie in to the end of our last conversation that you mentioned called remedy relationships.
Mm.
So I just wanted to start off asking you that while it's at top of mind.
Yeah, gorgeous. Yeah, I think I can't remember exactly what you're saying now, but there was something around like the different layers and how the different layers interact with each other. And so I just wanted to share that that is kind of the language that I would put to that is that often there's kind of what we call remedy relationships, where certain remedy states will have relationships with other remedy states. And so what you often find is as we peel back one wound and we learn to kind of work with that and alchemize it and integrate some of that, often it will then bring in another remedy that it's kind of directly related to. And so I just thought that was worth illuminating because
Yeah.
it's quite helpful to see that we're kind of almost like I talk about like the witch having an inner apothecary, but like there's this whole kind of, and it ties into the soul mapping, like there's this whole map of remedies that our souls come here to work with that have remedy relationships with each other.
Oh, okay. So I'm excited to learn about this soul mapping, but another question just came to mind. The way you just described that, how working with one wound will then like unearth another remedy. So what is this relationship between wound and remedy? Do the remedies mirror wounds? Like what what is that
Mm.
relationship there?
Yeah. So going back to the onion, like when we have one of those ruptures and one of those layers, essentially the wound puts us into what I call a remedy state.
Okay.
And so the remedies are reflective of the different layers and the different states that we've moved into through life.
Hmm.
But
Okay.
often they will kind of link to others. So for example, phosphorus can be very linked into, say, I'm trying to think of one of the remedies that she would be linked to, like aurum would be one of the ones that she commonly links to. And we can talk more about that in terms of like the surface layers often of the kind of related to phosphorus. So surface layer remedies is part of the soul map.
Okay. So then let's get into that, to the soul mapping bit. So before you tell us more about the soul map, can you talk about that? So is it kind of this idea of our soul comes in with a plan
Mhm.
around what it is that we may need to learn more, grow into, expand, or move beyond? And
Yeah.
then in that, we create a part of our map is all about our healing, or the entire journey is about the healing? Like, what is this? What,
Yeah.
how do you see the soul map?
I love that. And yes, to answer your question around like, did our soul come here for this? Is it's my belief that our soul has kind of come in with it. We talked about this, the kind of signature. It's come in with its own signature of remedies to work with. And our maps are all different. I mean, often the witch will maybe have phosphorus as her constitution, although other people have had different constitutions, so it's not always the way.
Yeah.
But there's usually we all usually have our own unique map. So it's not that we're here to work with all the remedies, we're just here to work with specific ones. And the most different one is our soul remedy and the particular core wound that we came here to live into. But ultimately, all of them have a kind of what we talked about uniqueness in the last episode as well. Like we've all come here with this unique medicine, this unique remedy to bring into the world, almost like our witch has her unique gifts to share. And so our soul map is a way of really discovering who our witch is,
Mhm.
like what she's here for. Um, and so a soul remedy, our soul map will map the different layers of the onion, and kind of give us a bit of clarity around what we're here to heal for ourselves, because it can just be about that. It can just be a map for like our personal healing and how to be the full expression of who we are,
Yeah.
because it illuminates the lost parts of ourselves that we've shamed and abandoned in essence, innocently. But it can also be a map for our gifts and who we've come here to be in terms of like uh as a healer,
Yeah.
because it also helps us illuminate like who we're here to serve. So there's like various different ways to work with it, but ultimately it provides us some clarity around how to heal.
Yeah. So I want to ask you this too about the soul mapping because it's something that I've noticed in my own path, but with other people as well. Sometimes, and you mentioned last time in the last episode that often we're kind of growing into the embodiment of, like, we will
Mm.
continue to embody with more fullness whatever it is our core gift may be. But one of the things I found, there was a part of my journey, for example, where I was interested with working with people who were just beginning, like
Mm.
they're just starting out in their journey. They're like, what is this? What am I doing? And then as I was personally evolving in my own work in the background, I wanted to work with people that they already got the base level, but now they're going in a little deeper, right? And this
Mm.
started to evolve and change. And then now it's open to both, but there was this phase of as I was changing,
Mm.
what I wanted to hold space for was also changing. So
Yeah.
do you find that that happens often with people, or do people get so rigid that they think, oh no, this is my thing and so I have to stay right here?
I love that question. Well, there are, again, it's not set in stone, and there are
Yeah,
like lots of different remedies within our own inner apothecary and our own soul map.
yeah.
And so we will weave in different threads of those remedies into what we're here to serve. But one of the things that can often come up that this reminds me of, that I think is important to speak to, is this sense of like we can also, when we hear, oh, we have to heal ourselves and then become a healer,
Mhm.
there's also this sense of like, oh, well, I'm not ready to be a healer yet because I haven't fully healed this wound.
Right.
And it reminded me what you were saying about like how your work evolved, is that one of the things that's important to know is that we have this soul map, but there are different depths of the remedies that we can serve. And
Yeah.
so, like, when we first start, we might be serving like just 5 steps behind us as to where we are now. Like,
Right.
but we're always somewhere now ahead of someone else who's behind.
Right.
And so, and I don't mean that in a way of like, again, talking about that pedestalizing piece. It's not like
Yeah.
that. It's just like we have more experience in the wound than maybe somebody else does.
Right.
And so we can help activate at that point, at that level for somebody else who's just behind us. But as we deepen probably into this different spirals of that same wound. And so again, there's this piece around wherever you are in the journey, the remedy will meet you. Like,
Mm.
and so I've had people be like, well, you know, some people it feels like you need to know a lot to be in your work. And other people are like, well, I know nothing. Like I know nothing about the remedy. And so I've held containers with remedy initiations and activations where some people have never delved into healing at all, and some people are like wanting to be healers and they're working with the same remedy and having completely different experiences because some people are just starting and some people have gone to like deep, deep depths
Right.
and are like still both receiving from the remedy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very interesting thing. And I actually had to, I did like a little bit of a tug of war with that because there was a
Mm,
period where I was like, I don't want to work with people that are in this particular space. And
mm,
I really had to soften around no matter who comes, the work will meet everyone where they're at. And that
yeah.
was the thing that I started to recognize and realize like, I think there was this fear of, oh no, do I have to hold myself back in order
Mm,
to hold space in this particular way instead
yeah.
of recognizing I can be very authentic into where I am and
Mm.
everything will meet everyone where they're
I
at
love
and that's
that.
okay.
There's a sense of like archetypal Luna in that, and like, oh, my magic has to look a certain way.
Hmm.
And it's like, actually, we can just be unapologetically magical, and
Right.
who will come will come. Who wants to come
Yes.
will come.
Yeah.
Mm,
So I'm sure that will help a lot of people because again, even with what you were sharing in the last hour, um, there's so much, I want to say this, just such a strange dance that a lot of us have with that, not only healing the wound and then
mm,
coming into these layers of self-acceptance and then coming into this, it's like a re-identification, like being reborn, and then trying to like recognize, well, but who is this for? And who do I want to serve? I mean, there's just so
mm.
many layers to it.
There is, and what comes to me there, and this is something that often, again, secret witches will struggle with, is that we've been taught this kind of marketing lens. And so,
Right.
as well as like quick fix healing, there's quick fix marketing. And that was something I massively had to journey through deconditioning because I
Yeah.
was a trained brand manager with an MBA. And so it was like, it was just like so baffling to me that there was this new way of like working
Yeah.
because it was like, well, no, because we need to know our niche and we need to know how to, and what I just started to see was like this truly is about just expressing from our truth and from where
Yeah.
we are, and people will meet us there,
Yes.
and we can
Yeah.
meet people where they are.
Yeah. And I have to say, for anyone that is, dancing with this right now, you may be surprised at like when you finally, I want to say, stop trying to force something that you think
Mm,
of what it's supposed to be. You really give yourself even more of that space to recognize what more is authentic to you. And it feels so
mm,
much better. And I think it goes back to what you were saying before with the embodiment. I think we even have more confidence in the
mm.
embodiment of whatever our gift or core gifts may be when we allow ourselves to just be that.
Yes.
Just be
Yeah.
that.
And it occurs to me like the the piece around like trying to figure that out
Mhm.
is again like another almost another remedy layer being like clouding our true expression. It's
Yes.
another part of the witch wound where we're learning to contort ourselves into, well, I need to market this way. I need to be this way to meet people. And it's like, what if we can just be ourselves and learn how to fully express ourselves? And that be the medicine. Like otherwise we're just contorting, and there's like almost like the way that I see it is the more that we can clear these layers out the way, and it almost like we work back through the layers to get to who we are at our core, and we just express that beautiful like phosphoric shining the light,
Mhm.
free of like all the and obviously not totally free because there's different layers, but like the more that we can let that light shine without the clouds of the shadow, like that's when our people will find us.
I have to ask you this because it just part of your story just came to mind how you were sharing with us, even when we were talking about the sister wound and,
Mm,
going to different circles and, you know, how a lot of us do that dance with being actually seen and heard and working through those layers of fear. Once you started to recognize, okay, I know what my core gift is, and I want to create this beautiful apothecary and archetypal work for the secret witches. did you have to really figure out how you wanted to use your voice? Especially, and the reason I'm asking Nicole is because a lot of people now are like, oh my God, what do I have to do? Because there's social media, you could podcast, you could blog, you
Mm.
could do
Mhm.
10,000 different things.
Yeah.
How was it that you decided on how to use your voice?
Mm.
And
I
is
love
that
that.
important for us to recognize, like the way we use it, not just that it's being used?
Yeah, yeah. And that was totally, yes, is the answer. That was totally about deconditioning the way that I saw that marketing had to work. There was
Mm,
a fear. I think it was a big kind of aurum layer of me outsourcing my power to the idea that marketing had to look a certain way. And
yeah.
so the more that I was able to work through that layer of like reclaiming my power around how I expressed, because for a time I would then outsource to marketing guides. So I'd gone through my period of outsourcing to healing and learning, no, we don't outsource our healing, we heal ourselves. I then went through a period of like, oh, well, now I need to figure out how I'm going to express myself in the world. And then I'm outsourcing my expression to marketing people. And
Yeah.
ultimately, they're only ever saying what works for them. Like
Right.
their little girl or little boy has had a fantasy of like, oh, this could work for me, and it's worked for them. And then they've packaged that up to sell to people. And yes, it might work. It might work for you as well. But often we'll pin our hopes on the idea that this is the one thing that will help us to express. When again, the real work is deconditioning our secret witch and having her not outsource her power to marketing. So it's very much about, like for me, it was very much about learning essentially just to start expressing myself in whatever form felt aligned. So one of the first things I did was I naturally just expressed through social media anyway. Although right, even further back to before I worked with the witch, I remember expressing through social media, and my husband, who I was divorcing, telling me that I was weird. So there was a whole
Huh.
load of like deconditioning of the witch wound there that I didn't really realize I was doing. But I was like, oh, how can I express this way? But I kind of reclaimed my writer and I
Mm,
loved writing. And I think it comes back to like getting in touch with what brings us joy, what kind of feels aligned. And it's that piece about like what's aligned, how's it aligned for us to express
yeah.
that then became like the lighthouse of like, how do I want to create in my business? And it turned out that that was a podcast, that was writing, that was the apothecary as that's coming in now. But there have been lots of ways that I've kind of played with that and lots of ways that I've had to decondition like there's a right way to do this, there's a right way to express.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned it being connected to our joy, what it is that brings us joy, and really leaning into that. Because again, a lot of people get caught in the story of, I'm supposed to do
Yeah,
every single thing rather than allowing themselves to enjoy whatever their expression is going to be. And it
yeah.
does make a huge, huge difference. So,
Mm. And that's often how we'll know the remedy's gold and express the remedy's gold is through that joyful
yeah.
expression as well. Mm.
And I have to say, for some of us, it may be something other than what we would have expected. So I say that
Mm.
to say, if you would have asked me at the start of all of this, what way do you prefer to use your voice? I would have said writing. And one,
Yes.
because I do enjoy it, but I also was still working through those layers of being seen. So
Mm.
I
Yes.
never would have thought podcasting, you know?
Mm.
And it's funny, it just occurred to me recently that one of my favorite things has always been having coffee with friends one on one. I
Mm.
love just a good
Me too.
conversation
Feels
with
like
one of
that's what
my
we're doing.
friends. Yes, exactly. And I was like, oh my God, that's essentially what I'm doing with the podcast. But I didn't make that connection
Mm.
back then. So I just say that to say too, it's interesting sometimes what ends up being your thing may be different than what you would expect or what you would think.
I love that. And there's a particular point in that because that relates back to like our gift as well, often.
Mm,
Because when women come across their gift, it's been my experience that normally that comes with, really? Like, are you sure? Like, that doesn't,
Yeah.
there's like resistance that comes, and I know that one because I resisted the witch as well.
Yeah.
And there's like a deep level of resistance to what's aligned often.
Yeah.
We're taught that alignment should feel easy, that we should
Hmm.
just flow, and
Right.
actually, like, it's rare that soul will call us to anything that is easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Oh God, Nicole, I'm so glad you said that because I've had so many people say, like, oh, this is challenging. Because you know that even that phrase, the path of least resistance became very
mm,
popular through the work of I think her name is Abraham Hicks, or she channels
hmm
Abraham
hmm
Esther Hicks.
Yes, yes,
And that was very specific, I think, to manifestation.
yes,
But a lot of people have taken that phrase and applied it to just everything.
yeah.
And yeah, so a lot of people do have this belief of like, ah, if it's challenging, then it's not aligned with me.
Mm,
And really,
yeah,
it's like sometimes the nuggets, the healing, the refinement is going to come through what it is you're going to bump against on that
yeah.
journey up the mountain, so to speak. And so
I
I'm
totally
really
agree.
glad
Mm.
you bring that up.
Yeah, it's so important because again, that sense of like looking for relief from our sense of brokenness, like it
Yeah.
has us lean into the quick fixes, and that kind of idea around like the path of least resistance, like that ties into this idea of quick fixes.
Yeah.
And in my experience, like nothing of what I've done to reclaim my witch has been without resistance, like
Yeah.
nothing that's brought me into alignment. There's always a consequence of
Mhm.
choosing something powerful.
Yes.
But there's also a consequence of not choosing something powerful. And so part of that kind of exploration of being in the costs and benefits is making those consequences clear so that we know which one we want to choose, right? And we can choose from a place of consciousness.
Okay. I feel like all you do is just open a can of worms for me again and again. You're like, here it is, next can of worms. So with what you just said, Nicole, it reminds me of this. A lot of people may the whole concept and idea of power in of itself could be like an entire we could talk about that for like
Mhm.
ad nauseum, right? However, you just reminded me of how a lot of people may have a fear of stepping into their power and may not
Yeah.
even consciously recognize why.
hmm
But one of the things I started to recognize as I was doing, you know, this work and energy healing and all these things, as I was coming into a different relationship with myself, and I recognized how powerful we are as
Yes.
humans and like the
Mm.
power of our minds and the power of us and our expression, just all the layers of how we
Yeah.
can manipulate energy and our relationship to literally everything, you know. I started to have this deep sense of responsibility for
Mm.
my expression in every layer, every level, right? But with that came, I wonder if some people have a fear of their power because of starting to recognize what they're capable of.
Yes. This is a huge part of the witch wound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted
And
to ask you a bit about that, like having
yeah.
a fear of what you're capable of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. There's this sense of like, and this is very common for witches, women who are here to be, who are secret witches, that their power will obliterate their lives. Like if I
Mhm.
step into this deeper call that I've had, whether it's to personal healing or to being a healer, like if I step into this, like what's it going to do? What's it going
Right.
to create? Like what am I going to create? And there's this sense of like my power is too much. It's the opposite end of the power shadow pole. Like either our power is not enough and we're
Yes.
hopeless, or we're like our power is too much and it's going to obliterate our lives. And so we can occupy a secret witch is either end of that scale. Either way, it's all power wounding or archetypal aurum gold, which is associated with the sovereigns and the queens and all of that sort of thing. Um, and so there is this sense of in the witch as an archetype, like this sense of power, like what's it going to create for us if we step into our magic, if we unlock our magic. And often as well, the more power we have, the more we will use it against ourselves to not have us follow that path to
Right.
kind of steer ourselves away.
Yeah. And that was the thing. I think I had to kind of like reconcile, am I going to be afraid or can I just have a healthy respect? Can this help me?
Mm,
Can this awareness help me just to recognize again the responsibility around
mm,
what we are capable of and holding myself accountable to my energy, my mind, my choice, my this,
mm,
right? Because
mm,
I know prior to doing a lot of this healing, a lot of us get stuck in what has happened to me, what have been
mm,
the external factors that have affected me in any way, which is part of the story, yes. But I think when we come into this healing work, there's a lot of then there's the mirror, but what part have I played?
mm,
And what is it that, what were my contributions along the way? What were my fears along the way? What,
mm,
having understanding around why our wounded selves expressed certain ways, right? So there's this
mm,
whole element within this too of this responsibility that often
mm.
comes for people as they go deeper in it. So I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you about that really quick, like that I guess it's like a side by side of feeling almost responsible to live into your gift
Yeah.
and simultaneously feeling very accountable to how you do that.
Mm. Can you say that in another way, just so I'm clear on the question?
So it feels like while we may in our healing focus on, oh wow, this is who I am and this is my soul's calling and this feels very purposeful.
Mm,
That's a piece. But
mm,
then how do you also marry that with how you're going to use your gift and your power in a responsible way? Because to
mm,
your point, there, what you mentioned before, a lot of us as students may put our teachers on pedestals and like
mm,
idolize what other people are capable of. And quite frankly, a lot of people will put themselves in the position to be idolized. And so
mm.
they may
Yes.
have gifts, but it may be like, I mean, not to be so dramatic, but an abuse of power we will
Yes.
see
Yeah.
sometimes in these realms. So, how do you
Mm.
embrace your gift and honor
Yeah.
using it responsibly?
I love that. I love that question. I think it ultimately comes down to how to exploring, and again, this is part of Orum's exploration, like the gold, the remedy of gold, like exploring the lens of power and what
Mm-hmm.
power even looks like to us.
Yeah.
Because often we've been conditioned into what power looks like, and often that lens of power has come from this very capitalist, patriarchal lens of what would call hard power.
Mm-hmm.
And part of Orum's gift, because Aurum is also a remedy of the feminine in that it supports a lot of menstrual cycle symptoms and that sort of thing, is
Mm-hmm.
like coming back to what I call soft power, like the feminine version of power, and what that means for us, and like how we can be more heart-centered in our power, how we can lead from love and how we can create from love. Because often we will feel that sense of responsibility, and the power has felt like so hard and almost like so penetrative and so masculine, especially for feminine women, and particularly for the witch who, was burned at the stake a lot of the time by men, and there's that very masculine lens of power, which has us kind of almost like, again, secret witches will shy away from the level of responsibility at that point, because it's like, oh God, I can't take anymore. Because like we tend to be over responsible as witches. We take
Mm-hmm.
on everybody's things because being phosphorus, we have no boundaries. We're like, oh, we're open, totally, like there's no walls. Just bring me all your problems and I'm going to solve them. Um, and so for me, it's about looking into exploring, like, what does power mean to us, and like
Yeah.
how can we be responsible for the feminine power, the soft power,
Ah,
if that
that
answers
is
your question.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah, no, it
Mm,
does. But I think I'm really glad we're having this conversation because I think these are important considerations. Like everything that has come up in these last few hours, I think are very important considerations and things that do come up for people naturally that often just aren't highlighted or spoken about. And so I think, will be helpful for some people to hear these things and know that they're not alone in these
mm,
aspects of the
yeah,
journey. So I have
Yeah.
to ask you this too. There's two things I'm curious about with your work. One, when you talk about this working with these different remedies, and is it a lot in a sense? Is it just energetic? Are you working with the essence of whatever energies, or are you working with like plant medicine and these types of things like in a
Mm.
physical form, or is it working in the
Yeah.
realm of energy?
Yeah, I love that question because again, like I've kind of almost like over the years, not intentionally, but like found that as I was working with my own healing, that I was working with these remedies very differently to how other people worked with them. And so I can't remember if I've already explained this, but essentially like I see remedies as a unique combination of three ancient wisdom bodies, combining three different lineages. The first one being homeopathy, which is traditional pills. The second one being archetypal psychology, which is kind of understanding the psyche and patterns and kind of almost like personality profiling in a lot of ways. And then the third one is energy healing. So in that combination, as I kind of noticed we didn't really need to take the pill, and it's kind of commonly, most homeopaths would really agree with that. Really, the pill was just because that's how medicine was acceptable. Like we put it into a pill because it's what we're used to.
Mhm.
They are energy remedies, they're
Yeah.
energy medicine, and so they will activate parts of us and start the healing process. But instead of taking them, I get people to, in essence,
Mhm.
channel them, call in the spirit guides of that remedy,
Yep.
and also have the archetypal lens to kind of go into deeper inquiry and deeper embodiment of the shadow and gold. If that answers the question, I can't remember what you
Yeah,
asked now.
no, it does. No, it entirely answers the question. It makes me think of how, anything that we come into relationship with and nurture that relationship is going to have some kind of impact on us because we are in connection to all things. But you remind me of like people who work with crystals. I mean, it's not something you would necessarily ingest, but people will work with
Mhm.
the essence or the intelligence of the
Yeah.
crystals and even plant work for that matter. I know there are a lot of
Mhm.
people who I think of people who are actually like growing plants and herbs and how they will talk to them and be in relationship with
Yeah.
them, and the getting to know them and working with their essence or energy is not just about ingestion. In fact, I
Mhm.
mean, some are poison and you can't ingest, but you would still
Mm.
work with the essence
Yeah.
of. So
I
yeah, I
love
mean,
that. And
wait,
there's almost like a sense there going back to the embodiment piece in
yeah.
that, like, for example, archetypal clear quartz is a crystal. And
Mhm.
so if we were working to embody that crystal, we might work with the crystal in practice because
Yeah.
that's helping us connect into the essence of it. But ultimately, it's an energetic medicine
Yeah.
that we're working with.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like one of those moments where I'm like, it's incredible that we're even having these conversations because I mean, listen, I know that people were studying these things and, having conversations around this since the beginning of time, but it's just,
Mm,
it makes my heart smile that it's becoming again more normalized, more regular,
I
where
love
we're talking
that.
about energetic medicine. It's very cool.
I
Um,
love that.
but the other thing I was so curious about with your work, because you work a lot with women, is does any of your work either highlight or have you noticed, even in your own healing, the tie-in with women's cycles? And so
Yeah.
I'm talking more from the lens of like what people may consider like maiden, mother, elder,
Yes.
or crone, however you want to,
So glad that
describe
you bring
that.
that up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that question because in essence, the remedies that we've been talking about actually, power magic truth, kind of correlate to that journey in many ways. So I often kind of say that and this goes back to the layers of the soul map in many ways, because the surface layers, some of the common surface layers that people generally need to work with in order to heal their witch and become a healer. And even to heal themselves is the three layers that kind of relate to the maiden mother crone journey.
Mm.
So the four that come to mind is like Rosa, who's kind of very much that maiden energy, but like also very kind of like wanting to bloom and be dreamy and like, and that's her kind of like open to possibilities, her gold. But like there's
Yeah.
also the tighten the bud piece where she's like the shadow maiden. So like Rosa is kind of the maiden, and Aurum, the gold piece, is like that journey into adulthood. So we're coming into like almost like the lover archetype of the kind of that's not kind of maiden mother crone, but it feels like it's almost a step
Yeah.
into mother. And then she wolf. She wolf's actually the essence of she wolf mother's milk. So often there's people know the archetype of the wolf, like with a lot of Clarissa Pinkola Estes work, but actually this particular remedy is what I call wildness from love. So that's very much like the mother, that unconditional loving wildness. So the she wolf is obviously the mother, and then we've got Luna, who is the kind of wise woman crone piece, and that kind of reclamation of our wise woman of our magic. So it's very much woven into that, and that's because a lot of the work that I did, and again, journeyed with archetypally, I started to see that this is very much going back to that feminine soft power. It is a journey of reclaiming the feminine.
Hmm.
Like the feminine has been so lost in our society, and particularly like healing is a very feminine, and not to say that men can't be
Yeah.
healers, like there's obviously a masculine expression of that, but for me, I teach what I'm embodied in, and I'm embodied as a feminine essence being and guiding women into that. So very much my own journey was one of reclaiming those kind of rhythms and cycles and the initiations of the blood mysteries.
Yes. Okay. So this is interesting because this has been, um, like top of mind for me because I'm 48 and like, like, ooh,
Mm.
cycles. So, but I've been very curious about how that leads or ties into uh, these healing journeys for us as that feminine embodiment. And I was curious from your lens and with working with women as you do, these cycles of maiden mother and then the wise one. Is it, do you recognize it as literally being associated with age, or is it more about where someone is at soul level? So
Yeah.
to say, could
Mm.
someone come to you and be in the stage of maiden, but they're 54 years old?
Yes. Yeah. And mostly we are because we've not had that conscious initiation to choose differently. And it comes
Yeah.
back to the remedies giving us the space to decide again. Like we've never, we've lost that ancient kind of passing down of that feminine wisdom, like somewhere along the way where it used to be like handed down and women would be offered choice, be like, okay, it's time to, first bleed. They'd be offered that portal into, okay, now you're moving from maiden into like adult.
Yeah.
Like there's that kind of sacred initiation that used to happen, and that's very much what I noticed when I gave birth. Going back to the birth story, was it was like I had been taken like energetically just taken from maiden and like birthed into mother, but without conscious choice. It was like I was ripped from maiden into mother, and
Yeah.
it woke me up. It was like, no, this is time to like go back and consciously reclaim that. And that's kind of what the witch showed me. And I think that's so baked into the witch
Hmm.
because she is a symbol of feminine power. And really these are symbols and choice points of entering into our feminine power in those different phases of life. So yes,
Yeah.
in short, it can be at any age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, Nicole, because it also brings up how, not just in a societal lens, but even bringing it in more to how a lot of us were raised or whatever the circumstances were of our childhood. A lot of people may not have experienced, the intelligence
Mm,
of what would have come with Maiden, may not have had, a safe space for that level of expression. A lot of
mm,
people at young ages, especially when you hear stories of people who have a lot of siblings and maybe they're the elder. And so
mm,
even as a child, they had to be in the role of mother. And so they
yeah.
completely bypassed the maiden, these kinds of
Mm,
things. And that's a interesting, I think, element to this work as well.
mm,
Especially, I think we don't always recognize what our relationship is to the feminine and masculine for that matter, and how our
mm,
life
mhm,
expression has, painted certain pictures that haven't given us an opportunity to tune into what is the highest expression of these energies.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And one of the remedies that comes to mind is archetypal folliculinum, which
Follic-
is
Folliculinum,
folliculinum, yeah, folliculinum,
folliculinum.
which is
That's a tongue
estrogen.
twister.
And so one of the things that I noticed actually, which was really interesting over my years of working with homeopathy, is archetypal folliculinum, which is a tongue twister, is estrogen, but it was also I started to think miasmatically because that's just how I think, miasmatically being the ancestral wounds. And I believe and have started to notice that the ancestral wound of our time that we are passing on
Mhm.
is archetypal folliculinum because we have been completely disconnected from our feminine through the pill. Folliculinum is also the pill because it's
Mm,
estrogen. So that kind of masking and like suppression of our natural rhythms and cycles
yes,
is now creating like a generation that are so disconnected from our femininity.
yes. Ah, God. Okay. This is what I said with you. Like you just keep giving me these cans. But this is also as well. It's funny. A couple of nights ago there was a special on here. I don't know if you guys had it over in the UK, but it was a special with Oprah and it was this whole panel of women talking about perimenopause and menopause and it was like
Mm,
everyone I know is all texting like, "Hey, are you watching the thing?" Because our generation seems to be the first. I'm not saying you, I'm saying my
mm,
generation. I don't
mm.
know how old you are, but my generation definitely are having these conversations in ways that, our mothers didn't. And
Mm,
also dealing with these changes in life in ways that our mothers didn't. So we didn't have these any direction of like, hey, what's going on? Like something's changing. They're like, oh, we had hysterectomies, the end. And it's like, well, what?
mm.
Was that the only option? Right. And so it's really interesting that you say this way of what's being passed down generation to generation because there is a big shift in how women's health is being highlighted now. Like even
Yeah.
seeing very young women now talking about all of this online. I'm just like, wow, like the conversations they're having, what they're talking about their menstrual cycles, all the things is just, it's mind blowing because, we didn't grow up with any of this being anything other than really taboo.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah.
the consciousness of that connection I would say to the divine feminine is definitely taking a turn.
Yeah. And of course, that's also, baked into the witch. She's a symbol of feminine power
Yeah.
and was for me, feminine soft power. But if we want to kind of define that level of power and how that looks to us or feels to us, yeah, it feels to me that she's a symbol of that. And so archetypal folliculinum, who is essentially the wise woman as well in many ways, is a remedy that I see more and more as a kind of ancestral layer wound. If we're talking about the soul map and the different layers we have, she would be one that's quite commonly coming in as an ancestral piece
Yeah.
that we're also passing on.
I want to ask you that too, because we did mention in one of the conversations that this work did bring up in you a curiosity around your own lineage. And
Mm,
have you found that as women do deep dive into their soul mapping and starting to recognize what their wounds and, gifts may be, do a lot of people start to then have this relationship or curiosity or calling to feel back into what has been passed down to me through
yeah.
lineage and through ancestry?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And yeah, it's been something that we like I said with archetypal folliculinum, like it's just been so disconnected from. So there's like
Yeah.
this yearning often to reconnect to the feminine and the kind of lineage of the feminine in particular, is something that I've noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another thing that's covered too. I've seen a lot of people posting about being in a soft era or,
Mm,
like
mhm.
reclaiming the feminine in that lens of softening and not doing but
Yeah.
allowing ourselves to be more slow and more receptive and just more nurturing of the self and the soul.
Mhm.
Do you find that that's a challenge for people when we have come up in a society where there has been a lot of focus on do,
Mm.
compete,
I love
act? Like you can't just sit there.
I love that that question comes in when we're talking about archetypal follicular and we're like serving her now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like because in many ways there has been that sense of shaming of the feminine which has had us the way I see it is, and this is very much my own personal view, but like the way I see it is we've kind of shamed the feminine and been taught that we should be more masculine.
Hmm.
And in doing that, we've also kind of allowed ourselves to pedestalize the masculine, and therefore there became this kind of like resistance against the masculine. Like then we were kind of fighting the masculine, and a lot of people who talk about the witch will talk from this lens of like anti-patriarchy, like really against the masculine, rebelling in that kind of very rebellious energy. Whereas the way that I teach feminine embodiment of the witch is that kind of coming back to the soft power. And the reason why is because I think the reason why we do that is because we have been taught that difference is wrong. We're
Hmm.
different as witches, that's wrong. Like that's the story we've been told. But actually, what we forget is that difference is a gift. And in particular, when we're talking about the laws of polarity and things that we were talking about earlier, when we look at relationships, um, there needs to be polarity for union. And so I can't remember what question you asked me that led me here now, but but there's like we need to be fully embodied in our feminine soft power for there to be union. We can't be resisting the masculine to
Yeah.
create change. We need to be embodying what it is to be in the difference that kind of supports and union is in union with the masculine, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. And it brings up for me with other things that I study outside of Reiki, is, like the alchemical marriage or that idea
Mhm.
of harmonizing and unifying the feminine and masculine within our being.
Yeah.
Although I will say the Reiki, what is often referred to as the master symbol, points to the same thing. But that. So in this work, even though there's a highlight of this reclaiming and owning and embodying the divine feminine, how could it not also like trigger our relationship or what our experience has been, our wounding has been, even in the lens of what we would energetically call the masculine? I mean, because it sounds like a lot of times, to your point, what people are talking about this as if it's only the feminine, but how, I don't know, in my mind, it would seem impossible to do one without the other. And even if you worked on one, it would automatically bring in some essence of the other. Has that come up for you in your work, or
Can you share more about the question again in a different way so that I can understand it?
working with the feminine? Is it
Mm.
automatically bring in aspects of the energetic expression of the masculine?
Mm. It's something that I've been in exploration of for a long time because there's a teacher that I follow who talks about, and this feels true to me in my body, like that we're if we're feminine, we have feminine essence. We don't have masculine essence. We have what she calls feminine yang and feminine yin. So I don't know if this is necessarily what your question is, but it just feels like a relevant exploration
Hmm.
and one that I'm kind of in the ongoing inquiry of, I guess.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that necessarily answers your question, but for me, I teach from a place of being embodied in the feminine essence. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah. So it's coming, yes. So I think with what you're saying, what's coming to mind is when we typically hear feminine and masculine,
Mhm.
automatically gender comes up for a lot of
Mm.
people.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
we'll make the association of feminine and masculine being also the outward embodiment of male or female,
Mhm.
where energetically speaking, feminine and masculine have qualities, and it is the unification of these energies that even
Mm.
cause us to exist. And
Yes.
so energetically speaking, like even looking at the symbol of yin and yang, it's like there's feminine in the masculine and masculine in the feminine.
Mm, mm,
Yes. So to the point of what you're saying, I could see how even if you are highlighting the feminine, it's almost like it sounds like the masculine would exist, but it would be the feminine expression of the masculine, just like the masculine may have the feminine would have a.
yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
It
I think
sounds
so.
like that's what this person may be talking about, but
Yes, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly that. Yeah, is
But
that's my
one can't
sense.
be absent. It just
Mm,
basically comes down
yes,
to one can't, it
exactly.
can't be absent.
Yeah, exactly that. And our work is to embody whichever polarity we're in so that
Mhm.
there's space for both to work together
Right.
in harmony. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to clarify that because, in the way that I think of it in terms of, the feminine and masculine again, like energetically speaking, both have to be present
Yes,
for anything to come into creation.
exactly. Yeah,
And so,
exactly.
like, no matter which one
And
you want to focus on, the other
yeah,
will be present.
exactly that. And if we are constantly pushing away the masculine by
Right.
rebelling and competing, that creates separation. And that's something that witches often experience in their relationships as well,
Yeah.
where coming into embodying their witch will help them to heal and alchemize relationships, even like personal relationships. Whatever their relationship is, whether it's with friends or with partners or
Partners.
however that is, or sisterhood as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have to ask you this too. And this was unexpected for this conversation, but I mean, I guess it would also point to the soul map, perhaps. Have you noticed how people will experience this, like shifts in the outer world based on what they're doing? This healing work, the energetic work, the internal
Mm.
work.
Hmm.
A lot of people come to this space that may be confusing for them, where
Mm.
now all of a sudden they may not feel as aligned in certain
Mm.
relationships, partnerships,
Yeah.
different aspects of life.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that? Did you go through that and how did you kind of
Mm. I
navigate?
did. I did. And what's interesting is I would say that I wasn't very conscious in navigating it at the time because
Mhm.
I was with someone who it was completely different to me.
Yeah.
And so I ended up divorcing him and that was aligned. Like it was really the first time that I really was like in my own truth
Yeah.
when I made that choice. Um, but I also help women navigate that as well. Like there's been many people who are navigating, breakups and relationship challenges. There's also many women who have improved their relationships that they thought were going to go down the route of divorce because they've embodied their feminine in a relationship where they were maybe rebelling. So it's kind of like what ultimately, like, there's no one fits all. There's no like, oh yes, this work is going to help you to like heal your relationship. Or it's not going to lead in divorce. Like either
Right.
way, like it helps you to come into alignment with what's aligned for you, is what I would say.
Yeah. And I'm glad that we got to squeeze that into the conversation as well, because a lot of people they're like, what is happening? Am I going crazy? Why am I feeling this way? But I also
Yeah,
like that you highlight it doesn't necessarily mean in every instance that this is an opportunity for me to leave. Sometimes it
yeah,
can be very healing for the situations that you're in.
yeah,
And,
for sure.
that happened to me at the start of this journey, the relationship that I was in. I, the person and I, we remained friends, but I
Mm,
had to get out of the relationship just because it felt like whatever I was entering in terms of my healing, I just needed to be by myself. There was
mm,
something for me personally where
yes.
I mean, you talk about isolation, how you spoke about in
Mm,
the first hour.
mm,
I did that. I mean,
yeah.
I hermited. I
Mm,
was very isolated in a lot of ways, but I had to start out that way for whatever was going on with me. And yeah, so I'm glad we bring that up because a lot of people will have different ways of experiencing. what starts to
Yeah.
change.
I absolutely love that. And I think it's so vital because, again, we can start to think in terms of like good versus bad, like, oh,
Right.
hermiting is bad. And because of the sister wound. And it's like, no, like ultimately, what we're inviting people into in healing is just choosing what's aligned. It's
Right.
making conscious the choice. Like, do we want to hermit? If we do, great. Like, that's
Yeah.
what's aligned.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what's healing. So I love that it's kind of like brought us back to that because it's like all of this is about deciding again, making conscious
Yes.
choices. And that to me is like what healing is, like lovingly making a conscious choice.
Yeah, oh, 100%. And, I've seen the opposite where some people at the start of this, they really call in support in so many ways to kind of help them
Mm,
anchor while they're going through. So,
yeah.
so many faces. I have to tell you, Nicole, I cannot believe 3 hours went by so quickly, but you shared some incredible, incredible gems with us. And I just want to encourage people to go to your site because there's so much depth to the programs and the work that you provide. We didn't even talk about the 8 elements, but you do have an event coming up on April 24th
Mhm.
and it's 6:30 p.m. in the UK. I believe for us over here in the States, that would be 10:30 a.m. Pacific and 1:30 p.m. for the East Coast. So, but check the time zones just to make sure. Can you tell us again a little bit about this event and who it's for?
Yeah. Well, this is a gorgeous taster ceremony of our upcoming membership, which is the Secret Witches Apothecary. And it's very much just like that tender, gentle first initiation into meeting your witch, like just even just opening the door a tiny little bit, with love for ourselves to be like, oh, like who is this? Who is this witch that's hidden
Yeah.
inside me? And so that's kind of what we'll be doing in a like beautiful ceremonial way. Just to kind of get a real taster for the apothecary and meeting our witch. So yeah, I'm super excited about
That sounds exciting. I'm sure
that.
if you're like, what? Meeting your witch, that sounds like an incredible ceremony. So we will put the information, of course, down in the show description. Also, I mentioned a couple of times you have a podcast called the Secret Witch Podcast, and I will put links below of your previous time here on Reiki Radio, including my time on your podcast. But can you share a little bit about what your podcast is about?
Oh yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I started this years ago now, and super, yeah, just love podcasting. So we have magical guests, including yourself,
Yes.
which yeah, it's just I love having juicy conversations. So it's just a great expression of my soul. But ultimately, it's for the secret witch, the woman who fears her magic, whether that's for healing herself or becoming a healer, and just to help her to embrace her magic, her power, and her truth, and be herself, be that fully expressed, unapologetically magical witch that she is.
Yes, I always say, Nicole, when people are doing this work, and especially people who want to be more confident in stepping out in the role of healer, whatever that means to them, I always think of how lucky we are that we have examples of people who uh, had the audacity to do it, even if there were a lot of layers to work through and heal through. So I'm very thankful that we have people like you showing up in the world and saying, I'm going to walk through this fire so I can guide you through it if you want to come in behind me. So thank
Mm.
you so much for all that you do, but I can't thank you enough for taking the time, 3 hours, okay,
Mm.
to sit.
I've loved every moment.
Oh, yes. It goes by really fast though, but it has been incredible really getting to know you even more than I had an opportunity to before. So thank you for all that you do. For everyone, go to Nicole's website, nicolebarton.co.uk. Follow her on Instagram at I am Nicole Barton. Sign up for the event April 24th. The links for everything you'll find down in the show description. And we will both see you very soon.
Thank you so much, Love. And just to share, like, also, like, people are mirrors, people
Yes.
are remedies. Like, I just so appreciate your medicine as well. It's just
Oh,
gorgeous. So, thank you.
thank you, my love. And for all of you, thank you for joining us. All right. So that was our week with Nicole Barton. I want to thank her so much for taking the time to sit with me for 3 hours to deep dive for the sake of all of us and our paths. So thank you so much to Nicole. If you want to join her event on April 24th online, be sure to use the link below to register. And if you want to learn more about Nicole and her work, go to her website, nicolebarton.co.uk, or you can also follow her on Instagram at I am Nicole Barton. And don't forget, she has a podcast as well called The Secret Witch Podcast. So I want to thank you all so very much for being here with me this week. There is more to come. Keep tuning in, and you can really help me and the podcast. And I deeply appreciate it. Just leave a 5-star review wherever you're tuning in to Reiki Radio, whatever your favorite podcast platform may be. And you can also follow the show on YouTube at Reiki Radio, and that would help tremendously as well. So that is all for this week. Be sure to go to my website, theenergeticalchemist.com, to see what is new and upcoming. And you can follow me on Instagram at Reiki Radio. I hope you have an incredible weekend. Remember to always journey in love.